What I'm going to be talking about is the secret to my success, and it's why I'm a rich man. And it's not that I don't hold any secret back. I tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about my past and all this stuff. But it's a subject I never talk about, and it's called spirituality. And I think the primary reason I'm rich is primarily I know I do have a lot of financial education, but I cannot violate my spiritual vows to myself. So we'll be talking about that. And just give you a quick of my background is that, when I was in high school, I realized I was screwed. I was fat, I was stupid, I was a pretty good football player, and I surfed. That was about all I had going for me. And the worst part about it is I never had a date. I couldn't kiss a girl. I was so shy. And so I knew I was in trouble. On top of that, my friends were really rich guys. They were good looking, they had all the women and all this. And I kept looking in the mirror going, ¿Qué pasa? What's wrong with me? And so, I'm flunking out of school. The only thing I could do, no girlfriends. And the teachers kept telling me how stupid I was. So I was going, what the heck's wrong, And it's about transformation. It's about evolution. It's about changing from a complete, the self-esteem was so low. It was terrible, my self-esteem. So whenever somebody tells me, what does it take to be rich, it's really transformational. Because inside of you is a poor person, financially, a rich person, and a middle-class person. And I had to decide which person was going to show the face on earth. So I had nothing going for me in all this, but I still wanted to be rich. And the only reason I wanted to be rich, I figured that was the only way I was going to get a date. It was just tied up that way. And that's what this program's about. Whereas not what do you want, what do you have to do, it's who do you have to be. What do you have to be? What do you have to do to be a rich man? Because as we all know, I have 2 Ferraris. It doesn't mean I'm rich. I could be flat broke driving 2 Ferraris. And I live in a big house, but we know a lot of people who live in big houses are flat broke. They're one payment away from bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. So it's not what you do or what you have. So I'll give you this little model. It's called be, do, and have. And I came across this model, be, do, have, in 1973. I came back from Vietnam. I was a pretty hardcore Marine. Marines have a point of view in life, and I enjoyed it. Whereas we had no women in our organization, we were pretty tough, and I was rotten tough. And we did a lot of horrible things. So I come back, and my poor dad, he says, you go back, get your MBA. I said, okay, I enrolled for the MBA. And I went to see my rich dad, and he says, what do I have to do? He says, you have to learn real estate, because real estate's debt and taxes. 71, Nixon had taken the dollar off the gold standard. And he says, dollar's now debt, you better understand how to use debt. I said, okay. And then at the same time, I was trying to date this girl, and she wouldn't go out with me. She says, okay, let's go to this seminar. I said, a seminar? I went to military academy, 6 years Marine Corps. I said, what is a seminar? So we're in downtown Honolulu. We go to this big ballroom at the Hilton Hotel, and there's this guy named Werner Erhard standing up there. And I listened to this. I said, this is a bunch of crap. This is, this is crap. And all these, but there was some beautiful women there. I said, oh, because, the Marines don't have many women around us. I said, holy mackerel, these are women. So I signed up for the program, and it turned my life around. But in that program called Earhart Seminars Trading, it's called Landmark Today. I recommend it to everybody in our company to do it because it's about being a different person. It's transformation. It's not education, it's transformation. So in there I learned be, do, and have. And most people are in the have. If I buy a nice car, I'll look rich. If I have a nice house, I'll look rich. If I earn a lot of money, I'll look rich. But you're not being rich. And so that stuck with me for a long, long time. So today we have 2 guests, and we're going to be talking about who do you have to be rich. You see, and when I was hanging out with, daytime I'd hang out with all these hardcore Marines, and the evenings I hang out with all these fruitcakes, these hippies and stuff like this, and going, holy mackerel, you know what I mean? But anyway, I am, a hardcore Marine, hanging out with all these hippies and flower children, going, man, I'm screwed up, So I go back to the base, the base was in Hawaii, and I hang out with all these hard-ass guys, and then I go at night and hang out with all these fruitcakes. So it was quite a confusing time. But of all the times, probably the most valuable times was those fruitcake times. And so you can talk to my wife about it. I'm probably as fruitcake as they are. We meditate and om and do all the spiritual things because that's how we got rich. So joining me today are Gail Goodwin, and she is the founder of Inspire Me Today. And I love the word inspire because it's inspirata. It's in spirit. And if you don't get on with your spirit, I don't know if you can ever be rich. I mean, truly rich. Money rich is one way, but spiritual rich and financially rich is a blessing. And also Sarah McLean, she's the founder of McLean Meditation Institute in Sedona, Arizona. Beautiful place where all the beautiful people hang out. And she's worked and trained with Deepak Chopra, great metaphysical leader, and is founding education director at the Chopra Center for Well-Being. So welcome to the program, ladies.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So let's start with Gail here. She's sitting in the booth with me, and Kim's on vacation, but it's kind of good because these women are gorgeous. But anyway, Gail, how did you get into this, the metaphysical or the spiritual world?
It started probably when I was in my early 20s. I had been raised in a Christian upbringing and never found the answers that I was looking for. And no matter how many times my parents took me to church or how many times they told me I should believe this, that, or the other thing, it didn't resonate with who I was inside.
Right.
And so I went looking for something different and found the same fruitcakes. I moved to California. It's the same kind of thing. And again, it was for that search for something more and found mentors that I hung out with that also changed my life by their viewpoint. So it made all the difference in the world. It's the people you surround yourself with. Right.
And what's the difference between spirituality and religion?
Religion to me is dogma.
Yes, that's the exact word, set of beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what we're told we should believe, whereas spirituality is what we feel. It's what fills our hearts. It fills my heart.
Yeah, I'm not making religion wrong, but I was the same way. I had to go to church until I was 12, but I dropped out soon thereafter because I just didn't find it. There was a lot of dogma, The love of money is the root of all evil. If you like money, you're going to go to hell. I said, Jesus, I better get out of here because I don't want to go to hell. Because I like being rich. I love being rich. So I had to go find another church. And finally it was this Reverend Ike. And he's a hardcore Christian guy, but he spoke the gospel according to my dogma, which is the love of money is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Stuff like that. Anyway, and our second guest is Sarah McLean, and she is from the founder of McLean Meditation Institute in Sedona, Arizona. So, Sarah, give me a little bit of your background, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. And I have a similar background to you. I think that my mother was Catholic, my father was Protestant. They didn't get along in their religious beliefs, and I didn't like either one of those churches. So, what I was thinking about was what we're looking for is what is looking through our eyes. So I feel like I was constantly looking for something that was hidden inside me, and I spent a lot of time traveling the world. I, like you, was in the military. I got on a bicycle and rode my bike all the way from Greece to Turkey to Pakistan. When I ended up in Thailand, I was looking for something. I was looking for the answers when all along they were hidden inside me. And I eventually found this moment of meditation, and I felt this, a sense of coming home. I remember the very first time I started meditating, I felt like, wow, there's peace in this moment, and I can have the experience of it right here. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to wear any love beads. I don't have to have a belief system. I did not know what they were talking about in churches. And it was just this moment that I will never forget. I was about 26 years old, and it was my world. It was opening up a whole new thing, and I wasn't very nice. You described yourself in high school. I was one of the girls in the smoking lounge and a little chubby, unpopular, and I ended up dropping out.
Of high school?
Eventually ended up going to the military and going to college, but initially it was really, I couldn't fit anywhere, and I love your be, do, have.
Right. And all I had to do, I was in the do part for years. I was doing what I had to do to be rich. I study, I go to classes, I understood real estate, I was investing in all this. But at the same time, I was in the being. I was working on my spirituality. So I'm going to not only financial seminars, but spiritual seminars, and hang out with the people. But eventually the light starts to go on, is what Gail calls, the inspiration, where the light goes on. And one day, if you've seen my video called "The Man Who Could See the Future," as a student of Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller, and one day I woke up and I said, "Holy mackerel, I'm only working for me." It was fun. Don't get me wrong. I liked making money. I was in rock and roll, the Police, Duran Duran, all that stuff. It was a great life, but it was not spiritually enlightening. And then one day I realized I was being a coward, and I wasn't teaching what I knew I had to teach. And that was really kind of the enlightenment part. And then I decided I'm going to take a leap of faith. And the moment I decided to take a leap of faith, that's when I met Kim. And we held hands, took a leap of faith together. That's 30-something years now.
Wow. That's great.
And we've never worked for a paycheck. We just keep going, knowing what we did, and became richer and richer. So as the song goes, how do you be one of the beautiful people? Mm-hmm, today I hang out with Trump and all the boys and all the rich guys and all this, but I would never have gotten there if Kim and I had never taken that leap of faith. And a lot of people believe in God, but they don't trust in God, so they don't take that leap of faith. And we're talking about the transformation from poor person to rich person, from ugly person to beautiful person. And I know I would never hang out with Oprah and Donald and all those guys if I had never taken that leap of faith. Because I was not taking a leap of faith for money. I wanted to find out whether or not there was a God or not. Mm-hmm, and could I test my mind to still become rich? So Kim and I took the leap in 84, as some of you know. By 94, we're financially free, richer than ever before. The thing I got upset about the so-called New Age movement was most of those people were poor. They were really, really poor. My sister is one of the only Western women ordained by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and they're poor. They take a vow of poverty. I'm sitting there going, well, I don't want to do that. Do you know what I mean? So then I kind of phased out of that organization and started the Rich Dad Company and all this because I'm spiritually more inclined to teach people to be rich rather than hang out being poor. Any comments on that, Sarah?
Yes, I was thinking, I love your integrity. You didn't slap a spiritual mask on and say, you know what, I'm just going to be poor because that's spiritual. A lot of people believe, and this is around meditation as well, that there are certain ways they need to behave in order to be spiritual. They have to have a certain set of dogma. They have to be poor. They have to wear certain outfits. They have to be kind. And I think it's integrity that matters the most, who you really are as you show up in the world. And that's what I love about you. I've only known you for a little bit now, and I love the way you're unashamed about who you are. And that's really what spirituality is that you're driven by your internal GPS and that you have your own personal vows, whether it's to know God or whether it's to be generous or to be kind. And that is really spirituality, is to be driven by that interior world that you're in, that vow that you've made. And, who are you really? We often say, well, I am this, I have this job, I met this woman, I have this much money. But who you really are is outside of those roles and responsibilities that you walk around with, all of those relationships that you have. Who you really are is what shows up.
Most people get stuck. Most people get stuck in the do and they have. They're not in the be. And people who are not into the being, but they're into the doing. For example, one of my really good friends, we're both Marine pilots together. Guy is flat broke today, but he was rich 4 years ago. And I talked to him about stuff like this. I'm just going to go work harder. That he's in the do, not the be. Any comments on that, Gail?
Yeah, I loved what Sarah said also. What I find most interesting is that what you're talking about of be and do and have is most people try the do track and think that that's going to get them there. But yet when you do the be track, the do track shows up for you. It's like, I don't know, that's to me is the spiritual part of this. It's almost like magic. But if I act like I already have something and I celebrate it in advance, it shows up in my life in a faster, more concrete way than I could have ever created it myself if I'd been in the do mode.
Yeah, I kind of buy off on that, but as I said, one of the reasons I bugged out of that whole environment was because most of the people were poor.
Oh, I agree, and that's the reason.
I just couldn't stand being around them after a while. It was like, Jesus, you guys are spiritual, but you're broke. Give me a break.
And it's interesting that you say that, Robert, because that's the main reason that I left mainstream religion.
Yeah.
I was raised in a church that poverty is good.
The love of money is the root of all evil.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we're going to be talking now is what does it take to be? What does it take to be? So we talked about this guy earlier. His name is Hal Elrod. He wrote the book Miracle Morning.
He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And I used to go to all these metaphysical workshops, and meditation and visualization. Mm-hmm. I went to one of Chopra's works and Earhart's works and all those guys. But the thing I loved about what Hal Elrod did with Miracle Morning, he packaged ancient wisdom in a 6-letter word, SAVERS, S-A-V-E-R-S. Mm-hmm. And SAVERS stands for silence, which is meditation, affirmation for the A, visualization, E for exercise, R for reading, and S for scribing or journaling. So every morning, I do it about 90% of the time. I did it this morning. I meditate. I sit in, silence is the hardest thing for most people. See, prayer is you asking, you talking to God. When you're silent and meditating, God's talking to you, to your prefrontal cortex, your brain. That's how you get smarter. And then I visualize what I want and all this stuff, and I get calm and still. Then I come to work because I'm hyperactive. So for those who want to know a little bit about it, I recommend Miracle Morning because it's a practice I do every morning. He took ancient wisdom and packaged it for the new times. So Sarah, what you run a meditation institute. What is meditation to you?
Well, meditation is such a vast subject. You mentioned that before.
Yes.
It really refers to a variety of practices, whether, as Gail was saying at the break, whether it's walking in the woods or whether it is a specific, more formal practice where you're sitting with your eyes closed and stilling the mind. And it's really not a willful thing. You're not stilling the mind yourself. The nature of the mind is to still if you do certain practices, and they require a focus for your meditation, whether you're gazing at a candle flame, saying a mantra internally, imagining a deity in your mind's eye. I mean, whether you're Tibetan Buddhist, Zen Buddhist, Christian contemplative, there are so many ways. Chinese Buddhist, right? There's so many ways to practice meditation. So it means so many things to different people, but it is a practice that settles down the nervous system, releases stress from the physiology.
Can I say something? The reason most people are broke is they can't stop their minds.
That's right.
True.
One of the biggest aha moments I had was going through the S practice is, everybody, especially the Western world, my mind is so important. Well, your mind is your enemy, too. I mean, your mind is your friend, mind is your enemy. But like this morning, I get up and I say, well, what should I have? Should I have a chocolate donut? Or should I have a veggie milkshake? Whatever. Well, naturally, the chocolate donut wins. You know what I mean? And there are people who are into addiction. They can't control their mind. And I have many friends who are entrepreneurs. They can't shut off their minds.
Right.
So the mind is this tape, this loop, and it's the same 1,000 thoughts going round and round and round and round and round. And my definition of meditation is you hit this point of silence so God can get a word in edgewise. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I just want to go back to the beat have.
Wait. Let me finish that thought.
Oh, sure.
You got to shut up sometimes in your head. No, I'm not talking to you, Sarah. I'm talking the hardest thing to do for most people. They can't shut up. That's what I'm talking about. So meditation basically shuts off the mind. Because most people think, the Western world is, my mind, I went to Harvard. Your mind can be your biggest enemy. Like this morning I got up and I said, okay, I don't have to go to the gym. But my spirit says, you better go to the gym. You know what I mean? That's the battle. And that's what I want to make clear here. So meditation is the ultimate control of going to silence. And that's why I love Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. What do you want to say, Sarah?
Well, I want to say there's Blaise Pascal, the ancient mathematician there. He said all men's miseries derive from not being able to sit in a room quietly alone.
Still.
And you're saying that yourself. It's like the mind just wants to keep on doing. So I want to caution people not to do meditation, but to set aside some time to sit down intentionally, doing a practice that helps you reach the stillness that is there underlying the current of the mind. There is silence between each thought, and meditation is really being intentional about having that direct experience.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Gail Lynn Goodwin. She is the founder of Inspire Me Today and Sarah McLean. And we're talking about the secret to my success. How did I become who I wanted to become? And step number one is you got to shut up your brain. Your mind is chattering. It's like, they call it a loop. And until you can shut off that loop, God can't talk to you. So we're talking about what does it take to be rich, and also the thing that takes to be rich. I get spiritually rich, but I also take financial courses for my mind, so my mind cannot work against me. My mind can work for me. Like this person asked me, says, well, what does it take to invest in real estate? I said, take a course. Why do I want to do that? Well, that's their mind speaking to me. That's their ego speaking to me. What do you want to say about that, Gail?
I think education is one of the best things, and it doesn't have to be formal education.
Kind of education?
It doesn't have to be formal. I mean, I quit college and went into real estate at 18, right. And that school of hard knocks is where I learned.
Mind, right?
Absolutely. Right. It definitely trains your mind. And, if I can jump back to meditation in 1 second, there's one thing I want to share with you that I wanted to add. So many people that I come across say, I don't have time for that.
That's right.
And the biggest thing that I learned in interviewing amazing people through Inspire Me Today, Pope John Paul and Mother Teresa both took 4 hours every single day in silence.
Right.
Now, look at what they got done. That, to me, says a lot. So
right.
it makes me say, yeah, I can take 15 minutes.
And silence is, Sarah, wouldn't you say silence is a pretty high state of life?
Yeah, because in the silence is all possibilities.
Right.
Every moment, you talked earlier about a leap of faith. It can happen at any moment where you have the power to transform your life just by shifting your attention. And you can't do that unless you know what you're focused on. And so meditation helps you. It's a training for focusing to be able to understand, to be in the present moment where all possibilities exist, whether it's to be more self-aware and focused internally, or whether it's focusing on one thing at a time, whether it's real estate or making money. But we have to be ridiculously in charge of our own attention, and meditation will take us there.
Yeah. Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki. We're talking about the secret to my success. So the number one thing is our mind. Understand your mind can be your enemy. It can also be your friend. So the reason I checked out of the so-called New Age movement was they're always training their mind to be poor, and I got sick and tired of hanging around them. So I trained my mind. That's why I did financial workshops, so I could train my mind to work for me, not against me. The S stands for silence. If you can achieve silence, you're golden. If you can get to A, which is affirmation, you got to control what you say to yourself. Again, the mind. Most people say, well, I can't afford that. The moment you say you can't afford it, you're a poor person. You say, I don't have time, that means you're not in control of your life. So until and that came from, I'm not against religion, but I learned a lot in Christianity. The word becomes flesh. And if you cannot control what you say to yourself, you're hosed. What do you want to say about that, Sarah? What do you want to say about that, Sarah?
I say the exact same thing. I think your body is constantly responding to your thoughts. You have the thought, oh, my God, this is going to be a terrible day. Your body's getting ready for the fight or flight,
Right.
And so just to, again, being in charge of where you're focusing your attention. And we can do that. And I was reading some quotes from Werner Erhard, and he says you create your future from the idea of your future. You don't go back and pay a lot of attention to your mistakes and wish things were different. That is a big waste of time. Instead, you envision a future and affirm your life going from there. That's positive.
That's the be, the do, the have. Your future is what you want to have in your future.
Right.
And so, even though I was fat and goofy and not that smart and all this stuff, I really wanted to be one of the beautiful people. Inside my gut, I said, that's really what I want to have. And today I have it, but to get there, I had to be true to my spirit. Would you say that's true?
That's absolutely true to your spirit. Absolutely true. And it's what you're talking about here as far as being true to your spirit. When we're not, I think, is when we get in the biggest trouble of our lives.
Well, that's when the vodka kicks in.
It's when whatever kicks in. It's when we create all kinds of dramas vodka, and tragedies, and we create all kinds of drama to bring us back to that point.
Or your ego kicks in.
Exactly.
That's like my friend said, why do you need 3 Ferraris? I said, that's a stupid question. And today I know I would not be, I would never have met Oprah or hang out with Donald Trump. I know some of you don't like him. But he's a great man. And I hang out with the people I wanted to be like, the kids I was like with school. So the question is, what do you want to be? Who do you have to be to do and have what you want to have? So once again, this is the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to this program anytime at the Rich Dad Radio Show. We have Rich Dad Radio app. So continuing on, we have Sarah McLean, and she's the founder of McLean Meditation Institute in Sedona, Arizona. And she's worked and trained with Deepak Chopra, who's one of my heroes. And she was the founding educating director at the Chopra Center for Well-Being. So, Sarah, what would you like to say about how a person get more in touch with their spirit?
Well, I think that the spirit is always there. We just have to turn our attention towards it. Our attention is a very powerful thing. I mean, we look at it in the laws of physics. Whatever you pay your attention to will thrive and grow in your awareness. And I wanted to just address something you had mentioned before. You know, as a kid, you had this desire to be one of the beautiful people. You know, desires, whether they're Mother Teresa's desire to help people, or whether it's Donald Trump's desire to be president, or your desire to be one of the beautiful people. Desires are not accidental, especially when they're that fundamental to who you are. And I feel like when we are on a spiritual path, we're not ignoring those. I'm not talking about the desires that are maybe ego-driven, but the desires that are really who you are.
Right.
And my desire was really to come home, to find peace, and to wake up to the beauty and wonder of this world, and to help other people do that. So I just followed the breadcrumbs in terms of, I think Gail was mentioning, you know, life just shows you the way.
You followed your spirit.
Yeah, I followed my spirit. Mm-hmm.
And that's the key, ladies and gentlemen, because when I had to quit my rock and roll business, I said, what am I going to do? And again, I had to follow my spirit. And I said, I want to teach. And I hated school. I just hated school. And I hated school because they didn't teach me what I wanted to learn, which was money. So I said, well, I think I'll teach what I wanted to learn. And that was simple as that. How about you, Gail?
What Sarah was saying there, I think, is absolutely brilliant. You know, just this whole thing of tapping into spirituality. When we do that, doors open that if we had tried to open them, they would never open.
That's correct.
But I think when we just follow, so many times people are afraid to take that leap and to jump off that ledge, so to speak. But I think that if we don't, God's going to push us one way or the other.
Well, sometimes God does. They push you in different ways, you know.
Of course. Most people would call that adversity or trials and tribulations. Yeah. But if we have that courage to say, you know what, I don't have what I want now. I'm not happy with where I am now. What do I have to lose? Let's go for it.
Well, most people let their paycheck run their lives.
Absolutely. You know, and that's sad.
And I'm going, you know, how unspiritual is that? You know, the other thing that a lesson I learned from Warner is to say, well, when I have this, then I'll be happy.
Exactly.
Right.
And that is the biggest trap of all, because you got to be happy to have what you want first.
Couldn't agree with you more.
So, you know, I'm happy with my Ferrari. I'm happy without my Ferraris. You know, it's just, you got to be a happy person. But that starts in the B. And what do you want to say about that, Sarah?
Well, I think what you're talking about, when I worked with Deepak, I still do occasionally go to the Chopra Center as a presenter now, but, you know, he would always talk about being object-referred. You know, I use the word codependence more, dependent on the external circumstances in order for happiness. And you contrast that with what Gandhi says, happiness comes from what you think, what you say, and what you do all being in alignment.
Yes.
And back
Amen.
to the be, do, have.
Yes.
And so when we're dependent on external circumstances, which we can't control, for happiness, we're in...
a paycheck?
Yeah. Or a man.
Job, a man, a good-looking woman, you know?
Right. Then I'll be happy,
yeah.
You know?
It's the ego-driven stuff. I want to say that, you know, there's a spirit, there's the mind, and the ego, and they're very different things. They're subtle, but they're all kind of wrapped up in one ball of psychosis, right?
Well, the subtle is the most powerful.
But, you know, I don't make them wrong. You know, my ego, my friend wanted me to buy a Tesla. I said, well, you go buy a Tesla. You know?
I have a Tesla.
Yeah, I said, I don't want one. I said, I have what I want. Yeah, but you should have I said, hey, you know what I mean? I have what I want. Leave me alone. So that's when, because I'm in line with my spirit. You know, when I had a Corvette, I was very happy with my Corvette. And when I had a beat-up old Volkswagen, I was very happy with my beat-up old Volkswagen. It sure beat walking. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But it's what I'm saying is you cannot have what you have if you're unhappy.
Correct.
You know, because what you have then is just a symbol of what you think happiness is. Does that make sense to you? I mean, I said, when I have a Ferrari, I'll be happy. And you get a Ferrari, you're still not happy.
Right. Well, I think that's what happens. Everybody gets the toys waiting for the feeling of happiness, and it doesn't arrive.
Yeah. And so for me, it's always the do. What do I have to do to have what I want? And that's where my mind comes in. I said, well, I better study this, I better study that. But I study spirituality, but I also study money. The average spirit, when I was hanging out with all the fruitcakes, you know, they never studied money. And then they get angry at me for driving. I had a Porsche in those days. I drive with a Porsche. I said, what are you doing with a Porsche, man? Well, I want to have one. Well, no, you know, you're just an egotistical capitalist pig. I said, well, screw you. You know what I mean? And I don't get it. I want you to have what you want to have. And that's really what but it starts with what you have to be first. So once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki at the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to this program on the Rich Dad Radio app, available at the App Store, and all of our programs are podcasts. And they're at richdadradio.com, so you can listen to it again. And this program is definitely worth listening to if you're not happy, because you have to be happy to do and have what you want. And when I came back from Vietnam, like I said, I was a pretty hardcore Marine, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I would do it again, baby. I loved it. But it was time to change. That was all there was. Anything you want to say about change there, Gail?
Most people, I think, look at change as something scary.
What they have to do.
Yeah, I look at change as, wow, if you're not happy with where you are, why would you not want to change? And I think
because they hang on to what they have.
Exactly.
I have a job.
But
I can't change that.
I think the first place to go when you want to change is start with gratitude. Because when you start with gratitude, everything can shift in your life.
Amen.
And I think everybody listening to this, no matter where you are in your world, you have something to be grateful for. So start there.
Sarah, how do you make that change to being happy or being a better person, whatever it is?
Well, we have to move to the most stable aspect of ourselves, which is interior. It's the interior stability of our own soul, our own presence. And when we start to create and yoke to that as our GPS, everything else works. And I do love what Gail said. I feel like appreciate your life. That's where it starts. Being appreciative of the Ferrari, being appreciative of the fact that you're even able to listen to this show, being appreciative of the ability to make a living or to change your life, whatever it may be.
Right. So this is, once again, we're talking about the secret to my success, and it's what did I want to have in my life, but not what I wanted to have. Who did I have to be to do that? So if I want to hang out with rich people, I had to be a rich person. Now, if you don't want to be a rich person, then don't do that. You like being poor and groveling around the mud. I've seen people do it. They love it. They have a great time. And I've been poor and I've been happy anyway. But that's the key to the success of it. Who do you have to be so you can have what you want to have? And one of the reasons I like hanging out with the beautiful people like Oprah and Donald and all the other friends is because they get stuff done. When I was hanging out with the poor people, they just bitched and moaned and meditated and prayed. They didn't do jack. I mean, they do nice things, like pet dogs. But anyway, they weren't getting much done. And, so that's the do part about it. So I have to listen to a lot of people who don't like my friend Donald, and I don't blame him. Some of the things he says are pretty irritating. But nonetheless, he's still my friend. And I don't dump my friend because that's not who I am on that space. Anything you want to say that, Sarah?
Well, again, you're in your integrity. I appreciate his fresh point of view. I love the way he's shaking the world up. Yes. I just think he's doing a great job. I don't know if I would necessarily vote for him for president, but I might. You just don't know. It depends. You never know what's going to happen next.
No.
Ever.
So anyway, I want Sarah has to leave us right now, but I really want to thank you for your contribution. What can you tell us about the McLean Meditation Institute?
Well, basically, you would think that in Sedona, Arizona, the metaphysical capital of the world, that there would be a lot of meditation centers, but there weren't any when I got here. And I actually have been open now since 2006, so almost 10 years, and I've been teaching meditation for 20 years and practicing for 25. But what I do is make it available for people to come in and learn to meditate. They can come in any day to meditate with us. But on Sundays, it's an introduction to meditation where they get a sampling, a buffet, so to speak, of various practices, whether it's loving kindness or gratitude or mindfulness practices, and it's $5. And I'd love anyone to come visit. So
your website is McLean, McLeanMeditation.com.
McLeanMeditation.com.
And I highly recommend it because I had to take lessons on how to shut my mind up. My mind does not shut up.
Right.
And exactly. Sometimes I'm sitting there trying, I hate that word, trying to shut up. Mm-hmm. But, man, it's chattering away. And it's saying the same old stuff I've heard for years. Why don't you just shut up and listen to something new? So once again, meditation is, to me, silence and prayer as you're talking to God. And they're similar but different. Anyway, I want to thank you for your contribution and your courage and for doing what you do. Who do I have to be? I only focus on who do I have to be. And we talked about it earlier. You got to shut your mind off. People think your mind is your friend. It's your enemy most of the time. I only have one drink, and 12 drinks later you're drinking, or I'm not going to go to work. I should work out, but I'm not going to work out. Your mind is not your friend all the time. So you have to discipline your mind. And so I go to courses and I take stuff to train my mind to be my friend, not my enemy. That's the whole thing. But the biggest thing is, who do you have to be? And so I want to thank Sarah McLean. She's the founder of the McLean Meditation Institute in Sedona, Arizona. Once again, our website is McLeanMeditation.com. And staying with me in the room today is Gail Lynn Goodwin, and she's the founder of InspireMe.com, a website that provides free inspiration daily to members in more than 150 countries. Her website is Inspire Me Today, InspireMeToday.com. And the word inspire is inspirata, in spirit. And so we're going to a very popular part of our program called Ask Robert, but we're going to talk about your spirit. So if you want to submit questions to Ask Robert, submit them to richdadradio.com. So once again, Melissa, what's the first question?
Thanks, Robert. Our first question today comes from Craig in Salt Lake City, Utah. Favorite book, Unfair Advantage. He says, Robert, what motivates you after all your years of success?
Great question. Let me go through the be, do, have model really quickly, okay? Today, who do I have to be to have millions of dollars? I had to get my spirit big enough to have millions of dollars. And you're measured by how big a problem you can solve. So some people, like when I was a kid, the biggest problem I could solve was $2. I didn't, if I could make $2, I was happy. But then I said, if I'm going to make $1 million, my spirit has got to be $1 million spirit. And that's the way I kind of look at things. So if a $10,000 problem, bill or something stops you, that means your spirit is only $10,000 big. That's why I measure much of my life in money. But the question you ask is perfect, because one of my teachers, Buckminster Fuller, he says the reward for a job well done is not money. I'll say it again. I do a big job, man. I'll get some money. The reward, according to Buckminster Fuller, the reward for a job well done is a bigger job. And then at that point, I go back to be, do, have, and I have to rework my spirit to get big enough to do the job. And so I always look at what is needed to be done. So that's why Donald and I are good friends. I'm not political, but he and I are committed to education. And we need financial education in our schools. But to do what we have to do, we have to be a lot bigger, a lot smarter, because we're going against the most powerful union in America, the teachers union. And they don't want us to do what we do. So my spirit has to get bigger. Any comments on that, Gail?
I think that's great. If we had learned the kind of principles that you teach as elementary school kids, we were all having lemonade stands and doing entrepreneurial things, and we're told, come on, get back to your studies, get serious.
Yeah. Money is
exactly.
Evil. Rich one, go to heaven.
Imagine if you take a child and you instill this from the beginning of their lives, that money is good, because, when you think about it, we can help more people that way.
It's not money that's good. It's what you do for money.
Absolutely.
If I'm robbing banks, that's not too good. You know what I mean?
Of course, but who we have to become in order to achieve what we have makes the world a better place in the process. It's the journey and the destination.
So I always start by meditation. Like, I'm going to take on a much larger I'm contemplating today taking on that teachers union. That's big. Those guys are vicious. They're nasty. I'm not talking about the teachers. I'm talking about the unions.
Of course.
And my poor dad was head of the unions, and my rich dad hated unions. So I understand the battle I'm about to go into. The same way I went into Vietnam, I had to be the best killer possible. And people say, oh, that's terrible. Well, why don't you go then? You know what I mean? Cowards.
It's the job you were given.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to do. So I had to be a man who could kill. And, oh, that's so terrible. Give me a break. Give me a break. Go do something more worthwhile. Choose what you want to be. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Richard in Denver, Colorado. Favorite book, Midas Touch. He says, Robert, you say business should be spiritual, but shouldn't business be the exact opposite? No emotion, pragmatic, calculated? Isn't this how you solve problems in business?
I don't say should. That's a very terrible word. You can be what you want to be. I'm a fruitcake, and I like being a fruitcake. Others say I'm a very tough businessman also. So you can be anything you want to be. You don't have to be one or the other. People say, well, I'd rather be happy than rich. I said, why can't you be both? And so many people have a lack of abundance of possibilities in their life. I'm going to choose to be poor because I want to be happy. Well, I'd rather be rich and happy. Man, have both. Any comments on that?
Couldn't agree with you more. And the thing is, they're not mutually exclusive, yet most people think they are.
But you've been taught that.
Absolutely.
But it's
we've been
also
taught
lazy.
That.
You're
Again,
also lazy.
It goes back to changing the mindset, which is changing who's teaching us and what we're being taught.
Wouldn't you tell me that's why you kind of got out of church and all that stuff?
Oh, exactly. That's why I left the church that I was raised in. I was raised with the mentality. I was taught money is the root of all evil. The rich people that come here, they're bad people.
They're not going to heaven.
Exactly. Only through the eye of the needle, all the kind of scripture that I was raised with as a child. And I just kept saying, but there's got to be something more. Because if I achieve more, I have to become more.
Yeah.
And in that process, everyone benefits.
Right. So, I love the Bible because I could choose a different scripture. You can
find whatever you're arguing.
Yeah. And so if you want to choose to be poor, knock yourself out. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Tom in Boise, Idaho. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, what traits make up a successful entrepreneur?
That's a tough question, man. The most important thing is I think you got to have a huge spirit. Because what entrepreneurs do is they go into the unknown. Most people are terrified of the unknown, yet magic lives in the unknown. And the reason people don't have much magic in their lives, they stay in the known. Like my postman, he's been driving the same circle for 9,000 years, and he wonders why he's bored, ugly, and driving around in a circle all day long. But it's job security, and that would drive me crazy. What an entrepreneur does, entrepreneur goes into the unknown, makes a lot of mistakes, but that's when magic happens. Any comments on that, Gail?
You have to go into that unknown willingly and without fear, knowing that if you fall flat on your face, who cares?
Fear is okay. Nothing wrong with fear.
But
I love fear.
But no. But I'm saying go with knowing that if you do fall, you just get back up.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. But as far as entrepreneurs, I've gotten the opportunity to interview people like you, like Robert, or like Richard Branson, Guy Laliberté, the founder of Cirque du Soleil, 2,000 different people, and what every single one of them, I actually have calculated, I shouldn't say every, like 98% will go back again to gratitude. And they'll say that is one of the things that as an entrepreneur that has made them successful.
Yeah. Also, I start from gratitude. I am very happy I have the skill set to go to the next level.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
But no matter where you are, everyone can start there.
Yes. Other thing I want to mention to people about fear, because it's a bunch of crap. Fear is always there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But the thing I loved about Vietnam was what the Marine Corps taught us was how to go into silence. And when we were terrified, I'd be rolling in on a site, and you go, bullets are coming up at you, and then you go into this trance. It's a silence. You don't hear anything. And all you do is focus on what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
And it's just quiet. And it's the most peaceful place. So as an entrepreneur, I know what I'm going to find is that peaceful place. But it's not going to be peaceful if I'm a coward. Well, should I or shouldn't I? What if I fail? What will my friends going to say about me? Which is where 99% of the people are. They're in the fear of losing what they have, so they don't have much. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Carly in Lincoln, Nebraska. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Everybody talks about the importance of setting goals. Do you set them yourself? And if so, how often?
Yeah, I set goals and all that, but I really more focus on what problem needs to be solved. And the way I personally, I've never stopped since 1983. When Kim and I took our leap of faith, I said, the biggest problem we have today is lack of financial education. And I hated school, so all of a sudden I had to change professions. Because I was a manufacturer in rock and roll, doing bags, hats, wallet, T-shirts of Duran Duran, the Police, and all this. And it was fun. It was a great time. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, But one day it was not satisfying anymore. So at that point I said, well, time to change. And again, I go back to quiet meditation and know what problem. And the problem is, you can see the problem today. We don't have an economic problem. We don't have an economic crisis. We have an education crisis. And between us and to financial education are the teachers' unions. Again, I'm not saying they're bad people, but I have to get really strong to take them on. It's like Donald has to be really strong to take on the Republicans. And most people don't have the strength because their minds get in the way. Any comments on that?
You're so right. I think it's that little voice in the back of the head that says, you can't do this. And it's the voice that makes us play smaller than who we truly are.
Right.
And in that silence, if we take that time, we take the fear, we breathe into it, we breathe through it. And I think fear plus breath equals excitement. And then we can focus on not that which we're afraid of, but instead what we want to accomplish, where we're going. And we all know that what we focus on grows. Let that grow.
Well, that's why I said when I was rolling into a machine gun nest and the bullets are coming at you, if you're panicking, your mind's going crazy, you're dead.
Exactly.
And so the Marine Corps training does extremely well to go into that meditative state where it's either kill or be killed. Now, people, that's terrible. Well, you don't know what life is like because life is found at that boundary when your life is at stake, and that's when magic happens.
Well, you had the experience in Vietnam that makes it very tangible to show what happens when fear hits.
Well, you can do that, paying your bills, too.
True.
When you don't have any money, I tell you, it gets real exciting. So anyway, it's really about confronting yourself. This is the thing I want to say to people. Most people think, well, I have a good education, but their mind, their egos, their doubts, their fears. I talked about really hating myself when I was a kid. I couldn't control my mind. That's why. I wasn't an ugly kid. I wasn't stupid, but I thought I was. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And I say, hey, you're a fat kid. The more I said I was a fat kid, the fatter I got. Do you know what I mean?
And, totally. It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And so our minds can be used for you or against you, same as your ego. I have a huge ego. I don't drive, Ferraris because I'm a nice, granola-eating guy. I love my ego. My ego is wonderful, but it drives me to be more spiritual also. Any final comments on that?
I think that's great. Most people would probably look at the Ferrari and not see that part.
Yeah, they see a rich guy driving this thing.
And a lot of people that are in that
jealousy.
Yeah, well,
and
exactly.
That's their ego.
Exactly. And I think when people get to the point that they realize that they too can be, do, and have anything in their lives, that's awesome.
When I used to drive up to those New Age seminars with my Porsche, I get harassed by these poor people. And I was a real jerk. And I loved it. I love being a jerk. And if you can get that, you go, how can that guy love being a jerk? Because he loves himself.